Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a debate about the human condition from a theist and from an atheist point of view. I'm Wes Morriston, professor of philosophy in the CU Philosophy Department. I'll be the moderator for tonight's debate. It is my pleasure to introduce the speakers now. To my left is Douglas Groothuis, a professor of philosophy at the Denver Christian Seminary. Dr. Groothuis is the author of 11 books and 26 academic articles. His books include On Jesus, On Pascal, and Christian Apologetics, a comprehensive case for biblical faith. On my right is Marvin Straus. He's co-founder of the Boulder Atheists and also one of the founders of COCOR. Mr. Straus will go first, so go right ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. My reason for being here is that I believe faith-based decision-making on matters of public policy and morality undermines the foundation of our democracy. My opponent and I are on opposite sides of a belief system with little common ground. It should make for an interesting debate as we address the subjects at hand. Speaking of the subjects at hand, I'd like to point out that these are partly philosophical questions, but mostly religious questions. These subjects are common to many religions, but they are most prevalent in the Christian world. Christianity, as practiced by 2.3 billion people worldwide, still rests on a foundation that was erected by flat world, desert tribesmen who lived thousands of years ago in a tiny spot on the globe. Many of their flat world concepts have built up over time, and they now deeply conflict with modern science. If you search the internet for definitive proof of the existence or non-existence of God, good luck, you won't find it. You'll find two sides of an argument that has raged for centuries without resolution, while each side claims victory. However, if you search for information on the real subject of this debate, the religious views about our four subjects, make sure you don't max out your memory. You will find articles that present conflicting viewpoints about the usefulness or uselessness of prayer, the validity or hypocrisy of faith, whether immoral acts by religious followers are isolated incidents or systemic to religion in general, whether human slaughter, such as the 9/11 attacks and the Beslan Russian school slaughter in 2004, were political or religious acts. I'm going to steal a line from one of Colorado's own scientists, Victor Stenger. Science flies you to the moon, and religion flies you into buildings. It is my contention that from an atheist point of view, all religions are so similar, in fact, in so many facets, that for the purpose of this debate, I will consider them as cut from the same cloth, especially when they admit they worship the same God. Despite my assessment of religions, they are alive and well. Criticism, disclosure of misdeeds or inaccurate information seem to bounce harmlessly off religions and the religious. I have been fascinated by the skills of people like Mohammed, Jesus, his ghostwriters, and L. Ron Hubbard, who create a chain of ideas that were able to not only capture, but hold the minds of their followers. Richard Dawkins called movable social ideas that survive the passage of time memes. I call people who can create successful religious ideas or systems meme engineers. Meme engineers create ideas that lock their followers into cult-like organizations using guilt, brainwashing, warm cocoons, and fear to prevent departure, debate, or heresy. Before we get to our four subjects, let's see how it all started. Come with me on a hypothetical journey some 20,000 years ago to the birth of God. This journey was the source of book subjects and studies by David Eller, Pascal Boyer, Scott Atram, Stuart Guthrie, and Lee Kirkpatrick. It's early morning. There's still dew on the grass as 8 hunters move across the prairie. Suddenly, something happens that is far outside their range of experience. The ground starts shaking. It shakes so violently that the hunters fall to the ground in terror, dropping their spears and holding on to the earth. The ground splits open, forming a large chasm, and one of the 8 hunters falls into the abyss, obviously to his death. The chasm slams shut, and eventually the ground stops shaking. If I had been there, I know what I would have thought. Some anthropomorphic being, some living thing, something had eaten my friend. Those 7 surviving hunters created a something with the characteristics of a real being. Over the ages, similar incidents must have happened many times. I submit the premise that this process of creating spirits and supernatural beings to explain the unknown would have been a natural and logical thing to do, and that led to the creation of gods and goddesses and the religious systems to worship them. And so began a process not only to worship deities, but to provide answers to a multitude of questions, some that the followers had asked and some that they had not. Suddenly, there is power and respect offered to the chief spirit talker, especially if he or she guides you past the crack. Imagine there are 2 pillars at the end of the speaking area that represent the gap in human knowledge base that existed when gods were born into the human imagination. Now let's move forward 20,000 years ago to today. With each scientific advancement, those 2 pillars move closer together. Germ theory, vaccines, the pillars move an inch closer together. Advances in mathematics, closer together. Inventions of the telescope, microscope, spectrometers, closer still. As those pillars move closer together, as our scientific knowledge base increases, religion suffers from those advances. Let me point out, because I know you can't see the damn things, that the pillars are not together. Okay, there's still some distance between the pillars. We still have much to learn. Let me introduce you to 2 scientists that caused the most concerns to religions, especially Christianity. First, Galileo. His studies of Jupiter's moons struck fear into the hearts of the Catholic Church. BG, which means before Galileo, the picture painted was an infallible pope who communicated directly with God. The earth stood still, and heaven and God were up there in the clouds. AG, you've guessed it, that's after Galileo, all of that stopped. Not only is the earth not stationary, but this podium, you and I, are moving eastward on a rotating earth at 550 miles per hour, right this second. Even more amazing, the rotating earth itself is moving in an elliptical path around the sun at approximately 67,000 miles per hour. As the Pope raised his hands to heaven, a make-believe God would have been disappearing to the west. Galileo's thrust in Pari with his telescope was nothing compared to the seismic quake and the tsunami of change that appeared with Darwin's on the origin of the species. Darwin, the gentle genius, was the exceptional scientist in realizing the magnitude of his discovery and the damage it would do to organized religion, and especially the firestorm that would follow the publication of Origin. That firestorm directly addresses our 4 subjects and is the reason Douglas and I are here today. What were the specific problems Darwin created? First problem, if Darwin's theory was correct, and if evolution was only a series of microscopic natural events that took place over millions of years, it contradicted the Genesis view that God created man and did so in one day. Later, Darwin's theory would contradict the view of a young earth. Second problem, Darwin's masterpiece was interference in the arena that was previously owned by religion. Even worse, his theory was served up in tiny bite-sized pieces of information that even the laity and common citizens could digest. The real harm, though, came from problem number 3. Problem number 3 struck terror in every believer's hearts. Humans were not the chosen ones with dominion over other animals. God had exalted humans and placed them on a pedestal. Darwin pulled the pedestal out from under them and dropped them down on the ground, and they were the same as all of the other animals. Origin was published in November 24th, 1859. The battles are still raging in our schools, in our courts, and in debates like this. I now come to the 4 subjects we have agreed to discuss. Much of what I share in the next portion of my comments come from the books, writings, and spoken words of Hannah Arendt, Carl Sagan, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Victor Stenger, Gordon Gamm, Jerry Coyne, and Michael Gazzanega. Question 1, where did we come from? Well, we start with the Big Bang, 14 billion years ago. The Earth circles the Sun, 4.6 billion years ago. Simple cells appear, 3.6 billion years ago. Simple animals appear, 600 million years ago. Mammals appear, 200 million years ago. Primates appear, 60 million years ago. And modern humans appear 200,000 years ago. There is absolutely no evidence of a divine hand having anything to do with it. Yes, it's true that we don't know the mechanism called abiogenesis that may have turned simple, basic materials, such as amino acids, into single-cell organisms. There are many things we simply don't know. This may be a good time to say there is no justification of doing a cut-and-paste job replacing we don't know phrases with God did it. I would like to define a couple of words. The 2 words are deluded and delusional. Deluded. Suppose Bernie Madoff called you in 2007 and said, if you will give me your life savings, I will guarantee you a 10% return. We now know that Madoff was lying. He was deluding his customers, but they were a party to the process. They stopped hearing anything after the words 10%. In this case, both entered into an agreement. Delusion, on the other hand, is a psychiatric term, and it means the belief of false information because of mental illness. I do not believe that religious people are delusional. They don't hear voices in their heads that no one else hears. They don't see burning bushes that no one else sees. My premise is that religious people are Madoff-like victims deluded by the belief systems from MIM engineers. Many religious marketeers believe what they are saying, and they have the benefit of 3,000 years of past experience to sharpen their sales pitch. Question 2, what is our nature? We are animals with millions of years of evolution partially shaping our behavior. Our nature is fight or flight. Yes, we humans are thinking animals, and you probably get tired of hearing atheists like me touting the goodness of logic and reason. But academics that work in cognitive psychology and neuroanthropology world write that our brains are great for survival skills like making instant decisions to run from danger, but lousy for long-term critical analysis of problems. In other words, we're easily deluded. If the question, instead of being what is our nature, had been what guides our behavior, I would have answered differently. There is a lot more to our behavior than our instinctive nature. Culture, community, family, the rules and mores of society all play a part in how we humans behave. Notice I left out religion, but religion does play a part in the way we behave or exhibit our nature, but I would suggest that it is the same as societal pressure or cultural training, not instructions from a white-bearded guy up in the sky. Steven Pinker, one of my favorite authors, in his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, thinks that humans are becoming less homicidal. Pinker points to the case of Anders Breivik, the Norwegian who killed 90 children in 2011. Pinker points out that the reaction of Norwegian citizens was calm and reasoned, more candle singing and forgiveness than bloodthirsty demands for justice. There was mostly pity, not hatred for the killer, and a fair trial that put him in prison. Steven Pinker, I hope you're right, that we are becoming more civilized. Question 3, what guides our lives? The answer to some is the white-bearded guy in the sky has provided rules called objective morality and guilt to guide our lives. My response goes back to nature and nurture. We obey the laws and rules of society and our own personal code of ethics and morality. Of course, ethics and morality may change depending on the circumstances. You may think you are a moral and ethical person who would never steal anything until things go terribly wrong and your child is crying from hunger. Here is one of the many ethical problems presented by technology. 2 soldiers are terribly wounded. One's brain is destroyed, the other's body is destroyed. Think of the ethical problems presented by a brain transplant, and don't be too quick to say it is impossible. Talk about circumstances changing, this is one of them. Whenever I've engaged in discussions about what guides our lives, the subject of God's moral imperatives or rules, sometimes called objective morality, comes up. When I've asked my opponent for just one example of an objective moral, lately I've been getting the killing and torture of innocent children by someone who enjoys the act. Not bad. You got to give credit where credit is due. I usually respond, congratulations, you are now the captain of a spaceship headed from Earth to Mars. Your cargo is 100 children whose parents are colonizing Mars. By the way, these are innocent children. Suddenly, there is an explosion on board and much of your food supply is destroyed. When all of the calculations are finished, you have a very simple, terrible choice. Arrive at Mars with 100 dead children, or arrive at Mars with 90 children who are barely alive, but can be nursed back to full health. I know it's an improbable scenario, much like the famous trolley car studies. But the point is, there is no objective morality to fix circumstances. Our morals and ethics may change due to circumstances. In this spaceship case, circumstances are probably going to force you to kill 10 innocent children. Finally, question 4, what is our destiny? Add a divine guiding hand to foretelling the future, you have destiny. Since I submit there is no guiding hand, I believe that we do not have an ordained destiny. I'll respond as though the question is, what is the human future? The long-term view of the Earth's future is that billions of years from now, according to the example we've seen in the cosmos, our sun will increase in size and its temperature will rise, destroying the Earth with heat. Eventually, our sun will either explode or dramatically decrease in temperature. On a shorter-term view, millions, not billions of years from now, if humans are statistically prone to the same future as past species, we are headed for extinction. Pick your favorite method. Some Armageddon virus kills us, we destroy our natural resources, and the population continues to soar until we no longer survive, or we're forced to watch too many episodes of The Bachelor and we all throw ourselves over a cliff. I hope that extinction is not our future and that we can evolve as a species that can remain viable. One of the questions that goes hand in hand with what is our destiny is the personal destiny question, what is the meaning of life? Our meaning of life is the meaning we give to it. If you decide your meaning of life is climbing all the 14ers in Colorado, go for it. See this cup? I've carefully used my pen to punch holes around the bottom to separate the bottom portion from the sides of the cup. Not a bad job. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. We are about 200 yards from Boulder Creek. If you decide the most important thing in your life is to go down to Boulder Creek with these 2 cup pieces and dip the bottomless sides into the creek and pour non-existent holy water into this cup bottom, go for it. That is your chosen meaning of life. I'm not certain why anyone would want to do something like that, but you could. I would not object as long as, key sentence coming up, you did not insist that I join you. We atheists believe that we are only on this earth for a short while, and I vow for one not to waste 1 second of my life. If I didn't enjoy the heck out of talking with you tonight, I wouldn't be here. There is no afterlife, no heaven or hell, not because I say so, but because there's no proof of it. There's plenty of proof for make-believe and superstition. I gotta admit it, I'm jealous of you college students in your future, a future potentially filled with magic, challenge, and great things. Oh, the wonders you'll see, the things you'll do, and the places you'll go. Thank you, Dr. Seuss, and thank you for being a wonderful, attentive audience.
The title of my presentation is Deposed Royalty, Christianity and Being Human. Let me quote from Blaise Pascal, whose insights will guide us tonight. What sort of freak then is man? How novel, how monstrous, how chaotic, how paradoxical, how prodigious. Judge of all things, feeble earthworm. Repository of truth, sink of doubt and error. The glory and refuse of the universe. Blaise Pascal was a 17th century philosopher and scientist, a man who engaged in rigorous scientific experimentation, created the first calculator, invented the notion of public transportation, and was also a philosopher whose works are best known in his book Pensées, or Thoughts, and he was also a theological controversialist. We find that in the Provincial Letters. I'll be drawing much from his thought. Ultimately, I'm trying to defend a historic Christian Orthodox position. Pascal claimed that the human condition was so strange that any religion or philosophy worth our attention needed to explain the greatness and misery of humanity. He says, the greatness and miseries of man are so obvious that the true religion must necessarily teach us both that there is some great principle of greatness in man and that there is some great principle of misery. It must explain to us these astonishing contradictions. Now, his view is that human beings are great with respect to intellect, science, morality, and so on, aesthetics, because we are created in the image and likeness of an infinite personal God. Our miseries, our foibles, our failures are based on the fact that as human beings, we have violated our conscience, we have ultimately rebelled against God, and we see the effects of that in our own conscience, in culture, in world history, given the violence, given the cruelty, and so on. Now, what are the options for explaining the human condition? There are a number of options. We're going to look tonight at 2 live hypotheses, to use William James' term, and that is obviously the atheist or materialist position and the Christian theistic position. There are other alternatives we will not explore, such as pantheism, polytheism, Islam, and so on. Now, how do we pursue an explanation, philosophically, for something as broad and deep and complex as human nature? Let me sketch this out. We want a true explanation, one that fits the facts, one that corresponds to reality. It should be factual, not imaginary. We want a rational explanation, one that explains who we are in accordance with the evidence and with sound reasoning. I will never in this talk appeal to blind faith or a leap of faith, or it's true because the Bible says so. Thirdly, we want a significant explanation, one that gives us value, meaning, and a realistic, that is, a true and rational hope for being human in the world. This concerns philosophical anthropology, which is a vital and crucial area of any philosophy of life, any worldview. Now, the manner of explanation that I will give is what's called abduction, or the inference to the best explanation. Now, what would make up a best explanation? The explanation has a broad scope. That is, it explains more than its rivals. It has no internal contradictions, and it accords with other well-established beliefs. Inference to the best explanation is not some kind of religious reasoning. It is used in matters of science. It is used in forensics. It is used with respect to evidence in the courtroom, in the legal setting. So it's a perfectly legitimate, widely used, widely understood way of offering an explanation. Now let me contrast the atheist view, which we might call scientific materialism, with that of the Christian view. The background belief for the view of humanity given by materialism is what we could call naturalism. There is no supernatural realm. There is no design plan for the universe or human beings. I think back to Carl Sagan's famous first line of his book, Cosmos. The universe is all that is or was or ever will be. It is a closed system. You have the causal closure principle. Everything must be explicable in terms of chemistry, biology, and of course ultimately physics. Human nature is something that has evolved over time, largely through natural selection and a few other principles. It is not designed, it was not intended. As Jacques Monod said, our number came up as in a Monte Carlo game. The human problem, according to this viewpoint, is essentially an ignorance of science, an ignorance of the way the world ultimately is. We used to have supernatural, superstitious explanations, and now science has displaced that, and we can give factual, logical explanations. That is, we must abandon superstition and religion and embrace a scientific approach, and as the solution, we engage in what could be called a secular humanism. That is, we want to value humans as knowers, as doers, do the best we can in the world that we have, but we cannot appeal to anything beyond the cosmos, anything beyond chemistry, biology, and physics. Existence, reality is exhausted by natural laws, particles, and a very long period of time. Now, I could go on for some time and talk about the logical problems with what I'm calling materialism or scientific materialism or naturalism. Moreover, this idea that there is nothing but natural law and particles and a lot of time is not a discovery of science. It is a philosophy that is brought to scientific endeavor. It is a worldview. It is not itself established by any theory or any scientific investigation. That's very significant. Moreover, it cannot even account for the idea of a theory, because a theory is a set of ideas that is mental. It's the world of ideas, and ideas are not reducible to matter. Ideas can be true or false, rational or irrational. Material states do not have those kinds of qualities. Moreover, I think that my debate partner will agree that philosophical materialism, scientific materialism, naturalism cannot defeat the problem of cosmic and human meaninglessness. And if your meaning is the only meaning there is, then your meaning could be anything, including the meaning of Adolf Hitler or Mao Zedong or someone who wants to engage in genocide. Now, what about the biblical perspective? The view that we find in Scripture and in the Christian tradition is that of what Pascal called deposed royalty. The background belief is not an atheistic world, a world without windows, as Peter Berger put it, but of a cosmos that is created and designed by an intelligent being. Now, there is evidence for this from philosophy and science. Mr. Straus referred to the Big Bang and then moved on very quickly. But we have to ask, if the universe came into being out of nothing 14 to 15 billion years ago, then by what means did it come into being? Did it pop into being out of nothing, so nothing causes everything? The received view on cosmology is that the universe is finite in time and that there was an absolute origination at a finite time ago. And I argue the best explanation for our existence then is a cause outside of the universe. So naturalism, atheism is in trouble if Big Bang cosmology is in fact correct. Secondly, we have the fine-tuning of the universe. This has only been discovered, these anthropic coincidences, in the last 30 to 40 years. So many constants, proportions, and natural laws are fine-tuned on a razor's edge to make conscious embodied life possible. This cannot be explained by chance, cannot be explained by natural law, and it cannot be explained by multiplying possible or actual universes, the multiple universe theory. So I'm not arguing for the Christian view of human nature in some kind of metaphysical vacuum. There is a background belief of personal theism, and I've only given two out of many arguments for personal theism. So what is human nature? The Christian view is that human beings are created in the image and likeness of God. That is, they represent God on earth. Human beings have reason. We can think abstractly, engage in logic, and so on. We are moral beings who have a conscience, who can abide by the conscience or violate it. And we are creative and aesthetic beings. And in these ways, we reflect, in a finite, limited sense, the very character of God. So the claim is that human beings are therefore unique in creation. That doesn't mean the rest of creation is not important. It simply means that given human abilities and activities, that we stand out and we stand up in the world of creation by virtue of our moral thinking, cultural creation, language abilities, and our yearning for something transcendent. So the biblical view claims that human beings are, in many ways, great, noble, dignified, because of their origin, and we can see something of our origin in history and culture and in our own consciousness. So think of wonderful creations such as the Eiffel Tower, Renaissance art, the amazing software that people have created. Think of moral achievements such as the conquest of disease, great humanitarianism through someone like Mother Teresa and many others. So there's much in the human condition to admire. Pascal says this: man is but a reed, the most feeble thing in nature, but he is a thinking reed. The entire universe need not arm itself to crush him. A vapor, a drop of water suffices to kill him. But if the universe were to crush him, man would still be more noble than that which killed him, because he knows that he dies, and the advantage which the universe has given over him. The universe knows nothing of this. So humans are distinct and unique in creation by virtue of their ability to think and act and create. And the claim here is that human beings, while creatures, while mortal, are different in kind from the rest of life, that we are unique among the living. You think of our rational abilities to construct and to dissect arguments, our mathematical abilities and equation that just happen to map onto the world when we do it right. But the biblical view is that human beings are fallen. That is, that we are damaged goods, that we are warped and alienated from our true good. And we see evidence of this everywhere with respect to sexism, racism, pettiness, greed, murder, and so on. There's a phrase from Latin which goes, corruptio optima pessima. There is nothing worse than the corruption of the best. And this is Pascal's idea that we are deposed royalty. So human beings are capable of greatness, so many achievements, and capable of horrible abuses, capable of attempting genocide and creating weapons of mass destruction, So given our great abilities and our capacities as made in the image and likeness of God, when we are twisted and warped and alienated from our true good, we can bring about far more evil than any other living thing on the planet. The biblical view is the essential problem with the human condition and every human person is pride, self-centeredness, egotism, which is ultimately rooted, to use Alexander Solzhenitsyn's phrase, in forgetting God. We are neither angels nor beasts. As Pascal said, we have a dual nature. He says, it is dangerous to make man see too clearly his equality with the brutes without showing him his greatness. It is also dangerous to make him see his greatness too clearly apart from his vileness. It is still more dangerous to leave him in ignorance of both. But it is very advantageous to show him both. Man must not think that he is on the level either of the beasts or the brutes or with the angels, nor must he be ignorant of both sides of his nature, but he must know both. And that is the biblical understanding, that we are finite, we are fallen, we are fallible, yet our origin through the hand of God was great, and we maintain that human nature, though it is now twisted. Now the answer, according to the historic Orthodox position, is that the human condition requires a radical readjustment by the very hand of its creator, and that God has done this for us in the person and work of a perfect, sinless human being who was God incarnate, the person of Jesus Christ, who came preaching the kingdom of God, who said that human beings must repent, they must readjust their conscience and their orientation to that of God's, and they must relate themselves to God through the work of Christ himself. Now, we know this through the New Testament, which I'll comment in a moment, is very well established historically given the standards of historiography written by eyewitnesses or those that consulted eyewitnesses. And the message is that human beings are great and human beings are sinful. That is, human beings have violated the character of God and their own conscience. They cannot forgive or justify themselves. Therefore, God alone can do this through the work of Christ. It is a message of liberation from above in order to be who we should be here below. It is a way of being human with hope and integrity. We can be honest about ourselves without lapsing into despair. We are deposed royalty, but we can be reinstated, forgiven, justified in this life, and in fact, live forever in a glorified, purified world in the world to come. Pascal says this, Jesus is the God whom we can approach without pride and before whom we can humble ourselves without despair. This is a worldview that makes sense of ourselves, others, and history and the cosmos. It puts the pieces of the human puzzle together. It is an adequate explanation. It is not ad hoc. It is not faith-based in the sense of being irrational or apart from evidence or apart from argument. And moreover, it gives us a way to live. It is not simply a system of ideas, a worldview that matches reality, but it is a power to live through the living reality of Jesus Christ. It provides incentive for us to live selflessly with the guidance of God, to keep a clear conscience, and to be concerned with the greater good of humanity for the sake of the glory of God. Thank you.
You may go.
Of the many points that Douglas has presented so very well, I will address only one unless I run out of time. Fine-tuning, since it, in my opinion, is related to all of the other points associated with these, the human condition subjects. Fine-tuning, as you may have heard, is the concept that a non-existent God designed the universe for creation of humankind. That argument is the perfect example of the lack of common ground between your debaters, especially when it comes to science. Fine-tuning, to me, represents a menage a trois marriage by religious science of Genesis, creationism and intelligent design. The child was called fine-tuning. I'm amazed at the devotion of people like Abdus Hussein Ali, who epitomizes to me the deluded suicide bomber. Amazed by the faith of people like Jamie Coots, the deluded Kentucky preacher who died of snakebite 6 days ago. This is not 5 years ago, this is 6 days ago. I'm amazed at the commitment of people like Mother Teresa, who dedicated her life to Jesus Christ. Don't get me wrong, people like Paul Davies, Martin Rees, Michael Behe, and William Dembski are true scientists, and anyone who faces them in a debate without a scientific background and complete preparation will get their lunch handed to them. Finding a poster child, single-cell organism like the flagella for intelligent design was a true accomplishment. However, despite the academic credentials of Behe and Dembski, and despite the fact that they did find the flagella, intelligent design has proven to be false and duplicitous. If we look at the argument for fine-tuning, the first thing that jumps out at you is the complex mathematical nature of the argument. Most laypersons, such as myself, would be hard put to provide a valid argument in favor of or against the argument. Let me give you just one example. Sir Martin Rees, winner of the Templeton Prize, formulated the fine-tuning of the universe in terms of the following 6 dimensionless constants. Yes, I emphasize the word dimensionless. N equals the ratio of the strength of gravity to that of electromagnetism. Epsilon equals the strength of the force binding nucleons to nuclei. Omega equals the relative importance of gravity and expansive energy of the universe. Lambda equals the cosmological constant. Hang on, I've only got 2 more to go. Q is the ratio of gravitational energy required to pull a large galaxy apart to the energy equivalent of its mass. And finally, D equals the number of spatial dimensions in space-time. Folks, that's what fine-tuning is all about. The end result of this complexity is that even people with PhDs in fields other than physics or cosmology are reduced to parroting the words of other scientists. I will only tell you what I've been told because I'm certainly not a scientist. First, if there is any truth to the fine-tuning argument, it is not that the universe has been fine-tuned for the existence by God of humans. Rather, it is that humans have been fine-tuned by their mere existence to the conditions of the universe. And secondly, considering the vastness of the universe and the possible number of planets that could contain life, it is arrogant to assume that only God-created carbon-based humans are related to the argument. From my layman's point of view, after reading countless pages of arguments about fine-tuning, I can only conclude that I need a drink of pineapple juice. I can only conclude that it is another example of religious academics doing their best to prove the existence of a divine hand. Let me return to my beginning comments. Iron Age religions were created by men engineers to worship the results of superstition and myth. These religions have grown and solidified into their present forms. They are extremely effective at re-engineering themselves to meet changing conditions and at deluding their followers. However, there is hope. The large number of people in America and Europe who have swelled the ranks of non-believers by tens of millions of people in the past 20 years is testimony to the effects of education, communications, and logical thought. I'm interested that my opponent used Pascal as an example because most people are familiar with Pascal's wager, and what he basically said is, odds say that you should believe in God, but just stop and think about that. You don't believe in God because the odds say so. You believe in God or you don't. It's just as simple as that. So do you think God wants somebody up there that lies and said, I believe in you, God? No, it's not the odds. You either believe in God or you don't. I was surprised that he used the Callum cosmological argument. I don't know if he agrees with me, but the Callum cosmological argument is one of the most dangerous arguments in philosophy. It is so boring that people have been known to tumble out of their chairs and hurt themselves because it's been going on for 25 years with little advance by either side. Our side keeps saying maybe it wasn't, the Big Bang wasn't the beginning of the universe, maybe there were continual explosions and this is Big Bang number 14. The answer is 14 billion years ago, I was just a tiny kid. I don't know much what was going on 14 million years ago, and neither do a lot of scientists. We have tons and tons of data. My third point is, do you really believe that you're damaged goods? Do you really believe that you're wretches? The piece of paper that I went over to pick up is Marvin's imaginary rules about how to be a great religious leader. And yes, I admit I wrote them with tongue in cheek, but to my absolute amazement, they have perfectly fitted religious leader after religious leader. And I want to bring your attention to number 4. Number 4 is the most important rule. It is the rule that gives power to the leader. What is number 4? There must be problems. You must be wretched. You must be in terrible shape that if you accept an imaginary God, you will be raised up. In 1900, the average life expectancy in the United States was 14.5 years. The average life expectancy today is 87.9 years. You're all warm, I hope. You're well fed. Okay, you may be covered with problems, but my point is that from the 1700s when Pascal was writing, yes, life was mean, short, and brutish, but today, I don't know, I'm having a great time. I hope you are too, and I don't think you're wretched, and I don't think you're damaged goods. In conclusion, my thanks to Douglas Groothuis. Groothuis, did I pronounce that right, Douglas? No. I've worked for 4 months to pronounce that, and I failed.
Keep working.
My thanks to Douglas, who has truly honored me by agreeing to debate me. Thanks to Wes Morriston for being our moderator. Thanks to Amity Martella of CU's Secular Student and Skeptics Society, and to Chris Lyons and Jim Behrens of the Boulder Atheist. Both groups are members of the Colorado Coalition of Reason, which was one of the sponsors for this debate. Finally, any mistakes I've made in my presentation or refutation, they are my own mistakes. They are not the mistakes of the person that I used as sources. Thank you very much.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, in the sake of fairness, I think I will simply respond to Marvin's first 20-minute presentation because he doesn't get a chance to respond to my 10-minute. And Marvin began with the idea that religions are based on faith and science is based on reason and evidence. I hope you'll see that the arguments I gave were based on reason and evidence, whether you like them or not. I'm not appealing to faith as against evidence or logic or even above evidence and logic. I'm saying that Christian faith is in fact a rational belief in a particular worldview. Now, some religions do teach this idea of faith that has no connection to logic or reason, but in fact Christianity does not. Marvin also said that religions are basically the same, and so he can paint with a very broad brush. Religions, in fact, are not at all the same. You have pantheistic religions, theistic religions, you have polytheistic religions, you have atheistic religions such as Buddhism, or at least early Buddhism. They are very different in their metaphysics, epistemology, and morality. Now, they are similar with respect to cultural manifestation. They have holy people, they have scriptures, they have rituals, and so on. But when it comes to their worldview, their philosophies of life, they are in fact very different. So that needs to be made clear. So if you're going to rationally assess, let's say, atheism versus a religion, you should specify which religion it is in order to be fair, and then with the principle of charity, try to find the best representative of that particular religion and perhaps not appeal to snake handlers. Now, I'm going to say something about science, and that is that historically, the scientific revolution in Europe was engineered and operated and advanced by theists. Now, that was no accident, because the theists, unlike the atheists, believe that the world is orderly because it has been ordered by a divine mind. The world is knowable because human beings were put here to know something about the creation and have dominion over it. And moreover, that scientific enterprise was meaningful because human beings need to deal with the effects of the fall, such as disease, lack of proper food, and so on. So the metaphysics of Christian theism is not only friendly to scientific endeavor, it is in fact an encouragement to scientific endeavor. Now, Mr. Straus said that there is a flat contradiction between the Bible and an ancient universe, or a 14 to 15 billion year old universe. In fact, there is not. The Genesis account and the rest of Scripture need not be read as saying the universe is only 6,000 or 10,000 years old. In fact, Christians have disagreed about that throughout history, and St. Augustine, writing in the 5th century, did not believe in a literal 6-day creation, or that the universe, let's say, was 6 or 10,000 years old, and he was hardly poisoned by Darwinism or by contemporary science, as some people might think, that if you hold to an old universe or an old earth, it's only because you're trying to refit Christianity to scientific opinion. Now, the text itself says who created, and to some extent how it was created. It was intelligently designed, but it does not say when it was created. So let's try to get that straight. Also, Marvin talked about Jesus or his ghostwriters, and of course I talked about Jesus as the ultimate solution to the human condition, and I do so not on the basis of a leap of faith or some kind of mystical experience, but on the basis of the historical evidence. The books of the New Testament, we have the 4 Gospels written by eyewitnesses or those who consulted eyewitnesses. We have the writings of Peter, who was a disciple of Jesus, 1st and 2nd Peter, and so on. These documents were all written several decades after the events they describe, and given the standards of ancient history, that is a very short period of time. We're not relying on 1 or 2 authors, we're relying on multiple sources that all agree on who Jesus was, his claims, his credentials, and on his supernatural resurrection from the dead, which again is not something that one need to believe as a leap of faith. If theism is true, God could raise him from the dead, and if the documents are reliable, and if the supernatural explanation, in fact, is a better explanation than naturalistic ones, then we have good reason to believe that Christ is Lord and to know, in fact, to have a justified true belief that he is Lord and he can change one's life for the better in time and eternity. Marvin's account of Galileo was just bad. I'm sorry, but that's a caricature that Galileo was against the church and he threatened the church, and the church held to this view of the universe, that the world was privileged, and so on. It's just not the case. Galileo himself was a Christian. He was not trying to threaten the scriptures. Moreover, I'm a Protestant, so I don't have to defend whatever the Pope did. And moreover, Galileo was trying to understand the universe according to observation and scientific methods, and he did not see his understanding as contradicting the scripture. He said, Scripture tells us how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. How much time do I have left? 4 minutes, goodness. All right. Let me talk about another thing. I'll go back a little bit to science. And that is something that Marvin has said in his first talk, and that is that any kind of theistic explanation in cosmology or biology is, in fact, he didn't use the term, but a god of the gaps. That is, we can't understand it scientifically, therefore we promiscuously invoke a supernatural cause to cover our ignorance. Now, this is really begging the question for naturalism. Let me show you how the design inference works with respect to the small-scale biological organisms like the bacterial flagellum and the large-scale questions such as fine-tuning. This is how I put it in my book, Christian Apologetics. It is a design inference. It is based on information, not the absence of information. X is either designed, or the result of chance, or the result of natural law, often called necessity, or the combination of chance and natural laws. 2, X, let's say, is not the result of chance or natural law, or the combination of both. Therefore, X is the result of design. We use design inference all the time. In forensic science, in archaeology, there are certain marks of design, complexity and specificity. And we see this in things like irreducibly complex molecular machines like the bacterial flagellum. We see this in the informational nature of DNA and RNA, and we see this at the level of fine-tuning as well. Now, of course, this kind of interaction is a little frustrating since I've said so much about this in my books and other places, but I simply commend to you that these are legitimate design inferences. They do not beg the question for theism against naturalism, and they do not invoke any kind of special reasoning that is unique to religion. They do not involve going into a mystical state or anything of that nature. The last point I'll make is that I think that Marvin's basic response to a Christian view of human nature and the cosmos boils down to 1, straw men, and 2, ad hominem. That is, his presentation of religion was not accurate, his presentation of Christianity was not that accurate, and then he uses extreme examples of snake handlers and various abuses in religion. Now, my argument was based on background information in terms of what the universe is like, the nature of the human condition as great and miserable, and a recognizable, well-respected pattern of inference to the best explanation. And I compared that to the naturalistic or the philosophical materialist viewpoint. And I am not alone. There are Christian philosophers such as William Lane Craig and J.P. Moreland and Paul Copan and William Dembski and others that certainly do not fit the caricature that Marvin has given, even though I respect the fact that he gave credence to the likes of a Bill Dembski and Mike Behe and so on. So I want to thank the Boulder Atheists and the associate groups. They really did all the work, all the legwork, and they were very pleasant and easy to work with. Thank you.
Thanks to both of our speakers.
My email address is up on the board if you want to say attaboy or give me hell. Please feel free to do so.
Okay. I guess that wraps it up. Thank you for coming. I hope you found